She helped an elderly man without expecting anything in return, but the luxury SUV at her doorstep changed everything. On a chilly morning, a young woman helps an elderly man carry his groceries, unaware that this simple act of kindness will change her life forever. The next day, a luxury SUV mysteriously appears at her doorstep, along with a heartfelt thank you note. Curious, she tries to return the gift but finds herself face to face with Liam Langley, the elderly man's charming and mysterious grandson, who holds secrets that could change everything. A story of love, twists, and choices that test the boundaries between pride and vulnerability. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated and never miss these stories. The clock read 7:15 a.m. when Mara Collins rushed out of her house. The streets of Denver were covered in a thin layer of snow, and the icy wind made her cheeks sting. With her cafe apron folded over her arm, Mara adjusted her worn-out coat, once again cursing how much she hated winter. Her routine was always the same: work hard, pay bills, and dream of a better future that seemed forever out of reach. As she walked down the slippery sidewalk, something caught her attention. A frail, elderly man struggling to carry a paper bag full of groceries. He looked fragile, almost helpless, and with every attempt to balance the weight, the bag threatened to tear. Mara hesitated for a moment, glancing at her watch. If she stopped to help, she might be late. But something inside her wouldn't let her walk away. "Wait! Let me help you," she called out, rushing toward him. The elderly man looked up, surprised. His face was etched with deep wrinkles, but his eyes carried a gentle warmth. "I don't want to trouble you, dear," he started. But Mara was already grabbing the bag and adjusting the hat that was about to slip off his head. She walked with him to a modest house a few steps away. Along the way, he introduced himself as Walter Langley, explaining that he had lived alone since his wife passed away. Mara listened attentively, even as the cold seeped into her bones and the bag weighed heavily in her hands. When they finally reached his door, Walter held her hand for a moment. "Not many people stop to help these days. You're a special young lady, you know that?" he said. Mara blushed, embarrassed. To her, it was just a simple act of kindness, something anyone should do. She quickly said goodbye, wished him a good day, and continued on her way. Little did she know, that seemingly insignificant moment would become the turning point of her life. The next morning began like any other. Mara got ready for work, drank the leftover cold coffee from the night before, and stepped outside. That's when she noticed something unusual. A black luxury SUV parked right in front of her door, gleaming as if it had just rolled off the showroom floor. For a moment, she thought it belonged to a neighbor, but something made her pause. On the windshield, taped neatly, was a white envelope standing out against the sunlight's glare. Her heart raced as she pulled the envelope free. Inside was a letter written in elegant handwriting. "Mara, your kindness is rare and precious. Please accept this gift as a small token of my gratitude. Walter Langley." She blinked, reading the words again to make sure she wasn't imagining things. A gift? A car like this? Couldn't be real. Mara glanced around, half expecting someone to appear and tell her it was all a mistake. But there was no one. The car was there with the keys inside, waiting for her. Overwhelmed with doubt, Mara decided she couldn't let it go without answers. But before I tell you what she did next, let me ask you, what would you do in her place? Would you accept the gift or try to return it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Determined to clear things up, Mara picked up the letter and searched for a contact number. It didn't take long to find Walter Langley's phone number. After a few rings, a man's voice answered, but it wasn't Walter. Langley. Who's speaking? The tone was firm and impersonal. Mara felt small. My name is Mara. Well, I helped Mr. Langley yesterday, and today a SUV appeared at my door. The voice on the other end sighed heavily. My grandfather mentioned you. He said he wanted to repay your kindness, but I didn't think he'd go this far. There was a mix of weariness and impatience in the voice. I'm Liam Langley, his grandson. Look, I'm really grateful, but I can't accept this. It's too much, Mara began, trying to explain. Liam cut her off coldly. I don't want to argue. He wanted to do this, so just accept it. It's the least we can do. The call ended abruptly, leaving Mara with more questions than answers. Who was this man? And why did he sound so irritated over what should have been a simple gesture of gratitude? So, what do you think? Will Mara accept the gift or insist on returning it? And who is this Liam, with his cold and distant tone? Something tells me these two are headed for some intense encounters. If you're as curious as I am to find out what happens next, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next part of this amazing story. The next day, Mara felt restless. The idea of a luxury SUV parked outside her house as a gift seemed absurd. Something inside her told her it was wrong, like she was accepting something she hadn't earned. The memory of Liam Langley's cold voice only fueled her resolve. She had to confront him in person. There was no avoiding it. After work, Mara searched for the address of Langley Hotel's headquarters. The location was stunning. A towering glass skyscraper reflected the golden hues of the setting sun. The doorman eyed her suspiciously as she explained her reason for visiting. It was clear Mara, with her worn coat and simple backpack, didn't belong in the luxurious world surrounding her. Mr. Langley doesn't take unscheduled visits, the receptionist said, polite but distant. Mara bit her lip in frustration, on the verge of giving up, when a tall, commanding figure strode through the lobby. His gray suit was perfectly tailored, and his polished shoes gleamed. It was him, Liam Langley. Before she could think, Mara stepped forward and called out, Mr. Langley. Liam stopped and turned, his dark brown eyes locking onto hers. He seemed surprised, but his expression quickly hardened. You're Mara Collins, aren't you? Yes. I needed to speak with you. Mara's heart raced as she took in his commanding presence. He was even more intimidating in person, yet there was something captivating about his intense, serious gaze. About the car, I assume. Liam crossed his arms, exuding impatience. Yes, it's generous, but I can't accept it. I'm not. She paused, searching for the right words. I'm not someone who can just take something like that. Liam tilted his head, studying her like he was trying to unravel her motivations. My grandfather made his decision, and he'd be offended if you refused. Do you really want to hurt the feelings of an 80-year-old man who only wants to say thank you? His words made her hesitate. He wasn't wrong, but there was something in Liam's tone. A challenge, almost as if he wanted to see if she'd fold under pressure. This isn't about hurting anyone, Mara said, lifting her chin defiantly. It's about principles. For a moment, Liam's eyes flickered with something. Interest, perhaps? He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. So, your principles are more important than my grandfather's happiness? Or are you just scared to accept something you don't understand? Mara held her breath. There was something about his tone, calm but charged with intensity, that made her heart race. But she couldn't back down. Maybe I am scared, but I'd rather that than seem like someone who takes advantage of others' kindness. The silence between them was thick, stretching across the lobby like a palpable force. Liam's gaze swept over her, as if trying to decipher what made her so different from everyone else he knew. "Fair enough," Liam said finally, a faint smile curving his lips, caught Mara off guard. "Let's settle this another way." "Another way?" Mara frowned, confused. "Dinner with me. Tonight." The statement was so unexpected that Mara blinked. Sure, she'd misheard. "What? You want to return the car? Fine. But if principles are so important to you, convince me over dinner." Liam spoke with ease, as if this was the most logical solution. "Otherwise, the car remains yours." Mara was speechless. Was he joking? Testing her? The idea was absurd, yet something in his gaze told her he was serious. And, to her own surprise, Mara found herself saying, "Fine." Liam's smile widened, transforming him completely. For a fleeting moment, he seemed almost human. "Good. 8 o'clock. I'll send you the address. Don't be late." Without waiting for a response, Liam turned and walked away, leaving Mara stunned. Mara spent the next few hours trying to make sense of what had just happened. What was this dinner invitation? A way to tease her? Or something more? By 7 p.m., she was still standing in front of the mirror, debating what to wear. She settled on a simple yet elegant dress, nothing flashy, but far from casual. As she adjusted the final details, Mara paused, her reflection staring back. Was she stepping into something she didn't fully understand? Why did Liam Langley intrigue her so much? And, more importantly, why did she care what he thought? Is Mara ready to face Liam and everything he represents? If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now's the time. Don't miss out on the next parts of the story, packed with twists and tension. Let's keep going. The restaurant was perched atop one of Denver's tallest buildings. When Mara arrived at 7:58 p.m., the chilly air of the glass elevator brushed against her, amplifying her nerves. Still, she hid her unease behind a firm posture. For someone used to simple cafes and quick meals, the place felt like another world entirely. The restaurant's glass walls offered a breathtaking view of the city lights below. Tables adorned with pristine white linens glimmered under candlelight, while a pianist played a soft melody in the background. Liam was already there, seated at a table near the window. His dark suit was as immaculate as he was, and the subtle smile he offered when he saw her momentarily disarmed her. "You're punctual. That's rare," he said, standing and pulling out her chair, a gesture that left her momentarily flustered. "I don't like wasting people's time," she replied, striving to sound composed. "Admirable," he said, motioning for the waiter, who quickly approached. "I ordered us some wine. I hope you don't mind." Mara almost said she'd prefer water, but something in his eyes made her change her mind. "Let's get straight to the point," Mara began, lifting her chin. "I came here to explain why I can't accept the car." Liam leaned slightly forward, his eyes fixed on hers as though analyzing every word. "And I'm here to hear your argument, as promised." She took a deep breath, resisting the intimidation his proximity imposed. "I'm not someone who lives off charity, Liam. I work hard for everything I have, and accepting something like that, it would feel like admitting I can't make it on my own." Liam raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by her response. "Interesting," he said, resting his chin on one hand, his gaze intense. "But don't you think that sounds a bit like pride?" "It's not pride," she shot back, crossing her arms. "It's about principles, He smirked, as if enjoying the challenge. "You're fascinating, Mara. Most people would have accepted the car, maybe even asked for more. Maybe you're used to a different kind of person, Liam." Her response caught him off guard. For the first time that evening, he seemed to hesitate, as if something within him stirred. "You're right," he admitted, leaning back in his chair. "I am used to people who want something from me. But you're different." Mara couldn't tell if it was a compliment or another one of his tests. But before she could respond, Liam continued. "The truth is, my grandfather wouldn't have done something like this without a reason. He saw something in you that I didn't understand at first. Now, maybe I'm starting to." There was a hint of melancholy in his tone, a shadow Mara hadn't expected. "Looks like you carry more than you let on, Liam," she said, softening her tone slightly. He regarded her carefully, as if deciding how much of himself to reveal. "Maybe, but tonight isn't about me," he replied, lifting his wine glass slightly. "It's about convincing you to accept something you clearly deserve." Mara shook her head, half smiling, half frustrated. "You don't give up, do you?" "No," he said, his smile making her heart skip a beat for just a moment. The dinner continued as a mix of playful jabs and heartfelt exchanges. Gradually, Mara saw cracks in Liam's cold, businesslike demeanor. Moments of vulnerability that made her curious about the man behind the mask. When the dinner ended, Liam offered to walk her out. The elevator descended slowly, and the silence between them was thick with unspoken tension neither seemed willing to break. Finally, as they reached the ground floor, Liam turned to her, leaning in slightly. "So, are you convinced?" he asked. Mara opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. His gaze was locked on hers, intense and brimming with something she couldn't quite decipher. Before she could think, he stepped closer. "You don't have to answer now," he murmured, his voice low, almost a whisper. And then, to her surprise, he leaned in and brushed his lips against hers. It was a gentle, almost hesitant kiss, yet it buzzed with electricity. Mara froze, her heart pounding wildly. When Liam pulled back, a mysterious smile played on his lips. "Good night, Mara." Without waiting for a reply, he turned and slipped into a waiting black car, leaving Mara standing there, still reeling from the moment. Mara returned home with her mind racing. What was that? A test? A manipulative move? Or something genuine? For the first time, she felt like she was dealing with someone entirely unpredictable, someone who challenged her in ways no one else had. Should Mara keep pushing back against Liam, or allow herself to explore the feelings that are beginning to stir? If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. The next parts of this story are filled with twists and tension you won't want to miss. Let's keep this journey going. Mara spent the night tossing and turning. The soft touch of Liam's lips still lingered, like an invisible tattoo. Every time she closed her eyes, the moment in the elevator replayed. The closeness, the warmth, and the way he looked at her as if he could see straight through her. But along with that came the doubt. What did he truly want? The next morning, the SUV was still parked outside, a silent reminder that her life was no longer the same. Mara sighed and made up her mind. If Liam thought a kiss would settle things, he was wrong. She decided to confront him again, this time for real answers. When Mara arrived at Langley Hotel's headquarters again, she expected the same difficulty getting in as last time. To her surprise, the receptionist greeted her with a smile and gestured for her to head up without hesitation. Liam was clearly expecting her. His office was everything she imagined. Spacious, sophisticated, and strategically positioned to offer a panoramic view of the city. Liam stood by the window, speaking on the phone. As soon as he saw her, he ended the call and turned with a faint smile. "I thought it'd take you longer to come back." "Don't confuse determination with hesitation," Mara replied, crossing her arms. "We need to talk." He motioned for her to sit, but she remained standing. "Why are you doing this, Liam? The car, the dinner, and—" She paused, feeling her cheeks heat up. "That last night—" Liam sighed and rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture that seemed uncharacteristic for someone so composed. "I'll admit I didn't plan for things to go this way. But you—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "You're different. And honestly, it's been a long time since I've met someone who doesn't try to use me." Mara raised an eyebrow. "So I'm a social experiment now?" "It's not like that." He chuckled softly, though there was a bitterness to his tone. "I just wanted to thank you for what you did for my grandfather. And maybe I got carried away." Before Mara could respond, a sharp knock sounded at the door, and someone entered without waiting. It was a tall man in a suit, his severe expression immediately putting Liam on edge. "Hope I'm not interrupting," the man said, casting a quick glance at Mara before focusing on Liam. "We need to discuss the Chicago branch contracts." "I'm busy," Liam replied coldly. The man ignored the dismissal and stepped closer. "This can't wait, especially given recent events." Something about their exchange caught Mara's attention. There was more to this conversation than met the eye. Liam, however, turned back to her, completely disregarding the man. "Give me a few minutes. I'll be right back." Mara hesitated but nodded. As soon as Liam left, the man lingered for a moment, studying her. "So you're the girl with the car?" "Excuse me?" Mara frowned. "Don't be fooled," the man said with a sarcastic smile. "Liam Langley only does things for people when there's something in it for him. I hope you know what you're getting yourself into." Before she could respond, he walked out, leaving Mara alone and flooded with questions. When Liam returned, Mara stood by the window, trying to piece everything together. He immediately noticed the tension in her face. "What happened?" She turned, arms crossed. "Who was that? And why does he think you only help people when there's something to gain?" Liam sighed, running a hand through his hair as if struggling to hold back his frustration. "He's a partner in the company, and like many in our world, he's cynical. Here, almost no one does anything without ulterior motives." "Including you?" Mara pressed, her eyes locked on his. Liam hesitated but didn't break eye contact. "I used to be that way, yes, but not with you." "Why?" she demanded, stepping closer. "Why am I different?" Liam exhaled and moved closer as well, stopping just short of touching her. "Because you don't want me for my money or my name. You didn't even want the car." That made me realize. Maybe there are still genuine people out there. Mara's heart raced again, but she fought to keep her composure. "That doesn't mean you can play games with people, Liam." "I'm not playing games," he said, his voice so earnest it caught her off guard. "Believe it or not, you make me want to be better." Before she could respond, Liam stepped closer, closing the remaining distance between them. He cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing against her skin, his gaze intense. "If I'm wrong for wanting you close to me, tell me now." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Deep down, she knew something within her had shifted since meeting him. And before she could stop herself, she closed her eyes. It was all Liam needed. He leaned in and kissed her, this time with no hesitation. Unlike the gentle kiss in the elevator, this one was intense, filled with passion and urgency that made Mara lose herself completely. Her hands instinctively moved to his chest, feeling the firm muscles beneath his tailored suit as he pulled her closer. For a few moments, the world seemed to stop. It was just her and Liam, as if nothing else mattered. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Liam rested his forehead against hers, his eyes shining with a mix of desire and something deeper. "I'm not giving up on you, Mara." She didn't know what to say. All she knew was that her life was becoming more complicated than she'd ever imagined. "Are you enjoying this story? Can I ask for a big favor? Please like this video. It only takes a second and helps us know we're on the right track with these stories. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. There are twists and turns ahead. Let's keep going." Mara spent the night restless, her heart racing and her mind in chaos after the kiss. She couldn't comprehend how it had happened, but it felt as if her world had been turned upside down. For the first time, she couldn't think clearly, and that terrified her. Over the next few days, she tried to focus on work, but it was impossible. Liam was everywhere. In her thoughts, in memories that refused to fade, and, to her surprise, in messages he sent from time to time. Short and direct as always, he seemed determined not to let her fade out of his life. Finally, Liam invited her to meet him again, this time far from the offices and all the formality. Reluctantly, Mara agreed. Something inside her told her she needed to understand who he truly was before deciding what to do. That evening, Liam took her to a place she never expected. A small, secluded park with tall trees and a tranquil lake. There was no luxury, just a simple bench by the water and the soft sound of the wind rustling the leaves. "Surprised?" Liam asked, watching her reaction. Confused, she admitted. "This isn't the kind of place I expected someone like you to frequent." He laughed, but there was a melancholy note to it. "I wasn't always the Liam Langley you've come to know." Mara frowned, intrigued. "What do you mean?" He sat on the bench, gazing at the water for a moment before speaking. "My life hasn't always been about hotels and business meetings. There was a time when I wanted something different, something simpler." "What happened?" Mara asked, sitting beside him. Liam hesitated but finally began to share. He spoke of his childhood, shaped by the constant pressure from the Langley family to be perfect in everything. His father, a stern and demanding man, never accepted anything less than excellence. Liam grew up believing he had to prove his worth at all costs, even if it meant losing sight of who he truly was. "When my father died, I thought things would be different. I thought I could finally do things my way. But the weight of the family legacy was heavier than I expected." He sighed. "So I became the man you know. Cold, calculated, someone who doesn't let anyone in." Mara looked at him, feeling a pang of sympathy. "But you're not just that, Liam. I've seen a side of you that doesn't match that description." He gave her a faint smile, though his eyes held sadness. "Maybe you're seeing something I haven't seen in myself for a long time." A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, Liam broke the quiet. "But what matters isn't who I was. It's who I want to be now." Before Mara could respond, Liam turned to her, taking her hands in his. "You've made me realize there's still room for something real in my life, Mara. I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect. I'm not. But I want to try. For you." Mara's heart raced. His words were genuine, and there was something in Liam's eyes that made her walls start to crumble. But at the same time, she was afraid. Afraid of getting hurt. Afraid of stepping into a world she didn't know. "I don't know if I can, Liam," she admitted, her voice soft. He leaned closer, his proximity leaving her breathless. "You don't have to decide now. Just give me a chance." And then, without waiting for an answer, Liam kissed her again. This time, the kiss was different. Deeper, more desperate. As if he were trying to convey everything he felt for her without words. Mara melted into the touch, her fingers gripping his shirt as the world around them faded away. For a few seconds, time seemed to stop. It was just her and Liam, as if nothing else mattered. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. Liam ran his fingers along her face, looking at her as though committing every detail to memory. "You don't have to be afraid, Mara. I'll protect you from everything, including myself." His words made her smile, but the moment was interrupted by the sound of a phone ringing. Liam answered, and Mara noticed his expression shift. "What happened?" he asked, his tone returning to that of the businessman she'd first met. After listening for a few seconds, he ended the call and turned back to Mara. "I have to go. Something's happened to my grandfather." "Walter?" she asked, already standing. Liam nodded. "It sounds serious. Will you come with me?" Mara hesitated but eventually nodded. She couldn't leave him alone in that moment, especially after everything that had just happened between them. As they drove to the hospital, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was unfolding. Liam's grip on the steering wheel was tight, his jaw clenched. Despite his usual facade of control, it was clear he was deeply worried about his grandfather. The tension in the air was palpable, and Mara reached out, resting a hand gently on his arm. Liam glanced at her, his eyes softening for just a moment before he returned his focus to the road. Whatever lay ahead, Mara knew one thing for certain. Her life was no longer the same, and neither was Liam's. The hospital waiting room was silent, but the tension in the air was suffocating. Mara watched as Liam paced back and forth, his jaw tight and his hands buried in his pockets. He was trying to mask it, but his vulnerability was on full display, a side of him she'd never seen so clearly before. "He'll be okay," Mara said softly, breaking the silence. Liam stopped for a moment and looked at her. There was a glimmer of desperation in his eyes, something he couldn't hide. "I don't know what I'd do if something happened to him," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Mara's heart tightened. The man who always seemed so confident and in control now looked like he was on the verge of falling apart. She stepped closer and gently touched his arm, offering whatever comfort she could. Before he could respond, the doctor entered the room. "Mr. Langley is stable now. It was just a complication from his age, but he's asking to see both of you." In the room, Walter Langley lay in bed, pale but smiling warmly. His eyes lit up as Liam and Mara walked in. "Ah, my favorite duo," he teased weakly. "You scared us, Grandpa," Liam said, sitting beside him. Walter turned to Mara with a twinkle of mischief in his eyes. "I told you she was special, didn't I?" Mara smiled shyly, unsure of what to say. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Better now that you're both here." Walter took Liam's hand and sighed. "But there's something I need to tell you. Something I've kept hidden for far too long." Liam frowned, worry evident on his face. "You don't need to talk about this now, Grandpa. You need to rest." "No, Liam. It's important," Walter insisted, his tone growing firmer. He glanced at Mara. "And I think you deserve to know, too." Walter took a deep breath before beginning. "When your grandmother and I were young, we faced a lot of hardships. We weren't wealthy like you've always believed, Liam. Everything we built came from sacrifices, not all of them honorable. Mara noticed Liam stiffen beside her. He clearly had no idea where this was heading. One of my first business partners. I betrayed him, Walter continued, guilt clouding his eyes. He trusted me, but I pushed him aside to ensure the business succeeded. It set us on the path we're on today, but at a cost I've never had the courage to admit. Liam looked stunned. You always said the Langley name was built on hard work and integrity. Walter nodded slowly. That's what I told myself so I could sleep at night. But the truth is Messier. And now, that man is back, Liam. That's why you've been receiving those threats. Mara's eyes widened. The man sending the letters. He's the old partner? Walter confirmed with a slow nod. He wants revenge. And honestly, I don't blame him. Liam ran a hand down his face, trying to process everything. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't want you to carry this burden. But now I see that was a mistake. Walter turned to Mara, his gaze serious. And this is where you come in, my dear. Me? Mara asked, startled. You're proof that kindness still exists. Something I lost sight of long ago. I believe you can help Liam face this and do what I never had the courage to do. Make things right? Mara looked at Liam, who seemed just as lost as she was. There was a growing tension between them, but also something deeper. For the first time, she felt like she was caught in something much bigger than she had ever anticipated. On the way out of the hospital, the silence between Mara and Liam was thick. He seemed lost in thought, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Finally, she broke the quiet. Are you okay? Liam stopped and turned to her, his eyes filled with conflicting emotions. I don't know what to do, Mara. My grandfather is asking me to fix something he broke decades ago. How am I supposed to do that? She hesitated, carefully choosing her words. Maybe the question isn't how to fix it, but where to start. Liam stared at her for a long moment before finally speaking. That's why I need you, Liam, she began, but he cut her off, taking her hands in his. You challenge me, make me see things in a way no one else does. And now, more than ever, I need you by my side. The vulnerability in his voice made something inside her soften. As much as she tried to resist, Mara knew she was already too involved to walk away. As Liam drove her home, the weight of Walter's revelations hung heavily in the air. They both knew this was only the beginning of something far larger. Walter Langley's secret had opened a door to the past, and now it was up to them to decide what to do with the truth. The next morning, Liam and Mara sat in a quiet cafe downtown. Between them lay a folder filled with old documents and a copy of the threatening letters sent to Liam's grandfather. The setting was unassuming, a stark contrast to the gravity of their next move. Meeting Samuel Price, Walter Langley's betrayed former business partner. Are you ready? Mara asked, her gaze steady on Liam. He took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on his coffee cup. No, but we don't have another choice. Mara placed a hand over his, a comforting gesture that seemed to ease the tension in his shoulders. We're in this together. Her touch brought a faint softness to his expression. He looked at her, his voice low. Thank you, Mara. I don't know what I'd do without you. She smiled, though her heart was racing. They both knew this meeting could change everything. Samuel's office was modest, located in an older building far from the opulence of Langley hotels. When they entered, they were greeted by a man whose appearance was simple, but whose piercing gaze seemed to see right through them. So, the Langley heir finally shows up, Samuel said, his voice laced with irony. "I came to talk about the threats you've been sending my grandfather," Liam replied bluntly. Samuel let out a bitter laugh. "Threats? You call them threats? I call them justice." Mara stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "We're here to understand what happened and find a way to resolve this. But we can't do that if you keep attacking." Samuel looked at her, surprised by her courage. "And who exactly are you?" "Someone who believes we can still fix this without more destruction," she replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. A tense silence hung in the air before Samuel sighed and sat behind his desk. "Fine. You want to hear the story? I'll tell you." Samuel recounted how he and Walter had been young entrepreneurs with a shared dream of building something great. They complemented each other. Samuel was the idealist, while Walter was practical and strategic. But during a financial crisis that threatened their business, Walter made a decision without consulting Samuel. He closed a deal that benefited only himself, leaving Samuel with nothing. "He ruined my life," Samuel said, his voice trembling with anger, and then had the audacity to pretend he was a man of principle. Liam listened silently, but Mara noticed the tension in his jaw and the way his hands clenched the edge of the table. When Samuel finished, Liam finally spoke. "I didn't know about any of this, and I'm sorry for what happened. But attacking my family now won't change the past." Samuel laughed again, but this time there was sadness in his eyes. "You don't get it. This was never about the money. It's about what he took from me. My trust in people, my dignity." Mara leaned forward, her voice gentle but resolute. "You're right. He wronged you and no one can erase that. But if you continue this cycle of revenge, you're letting Walter's mistake define your entire life." Samuel looked like he was about to argue but stopped himself. Something in her tone seemed to strike a chord. After a pause, he sighed. "And what do you suggest, young lady?" This time it was Liam who answered. "I want to offer you a position in the company, not to make up for the past. I know that's impossible, but to build something better together." Samuel's eyes widened in shock. "You're inviting me to work with you?" "I am," Liam said with a nod, "because I believe we can still create something that honors both your vision and my grandfather's." Samuel sat back in his chair, processing the unexpected offer. Finally, he looked at Mara. "This was your idea, wasn't it?" She shrugged with a small smile. Maybe he just needed a little push. For the first time, Samuel laughed without a trace of bitterness. "You're good, girl. Really good." In the weeks that followed, an agreement was reached. Samuel accepted Liam's proposal, and the two began working together, with Mara always nearby to ensure old wounds didn't become new conflicts. Walter, though frail, was relieved to know the past was finally being confronted. "You did what I never could, Liam," he told his grandson. "I'm proud of you." But for Liam, the deepest gratitude was reserved for Mara. One evening, as they stood on the rooftop of her building, he took her hands in his and looked deeply into her eyes. "None of this would have happened without you. You gave me the courage to face it all." Mara smiled, her heart racing. "You've always had that courage, Liam. You just needed someone to remind you." He leaned in and kissed her, but this time it wasn't rushed or desperate. It was a kiss full of promises for the future they were ready to build together. With the past resolved and a new path ahead, Liam and Mara knew challenges still lay in wait. But together they were ready to face them side by side. The connection that began as opposites had grown into the foundation of something far greater. What did you think of this journey? Did Liam and Mara make the right choices? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know how you imagine their future. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. We have plenty of exciting adventures on the way. Thank you for following along. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and share it with someone who would love it too. See you next time.